After 4 years of trading, I've made pretty much every mistake you can make. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing you a few things that I've implemented that really kept me on track and eventually led me to becoming a profitable trader. So the first thing we're going to be going over is being process over outcome oriented. You need to understand that you can't know the outcome of any individual trade, only the overall performance of a series of trades. So I drew this little diagram, and we have on the left we have this crying cat, okay, and he's really sad that he lost this one trade and it probably ruined his whole day. And on the right we have this kind of cool, maybe kind of badass cat, and as you can see, he lost that same trade, but he's all right with that because overall his monthly P&L is still green and he understands that it's a process. Okay, so if you want to be outcome oriented, then you need to expect this as your outcome. This is being a loser, being poor, living with your mom, having a dirty bedroom, and never accomplishing your dreams. On the other hand, if you want to be like the super cool cat, then you can be process oriented and get this result, which is being cool, being a millionaire, retiring your family, owning a GT3 RS, and accomplishing your goals and dreams. So, how do we actually accomplish this? Well, we need to detach from the outcome of individual trades. You need to understand that losing is part of the process of trading. So I drew another little diagram. On the left, we have that same crying cat, and he lost $200, and it honestly just ruined his entire day, maybe even his entire week. Okay? And on the right, we have that pretty cool cat. He also lost $200, but he is all right with it. Okay? That was unfortunate, but that's how trading works. He understands that. You need to understand that chasing results makes you irrational. And whenever you're irrational, that is when you are going to lose in trading. You are going to lose more than you should. And this is the reason that you're unprofitable, because you're losing more than you should. Losing is part of the process, but you need to be able to manage your losses correctly and not be so emotionally invested in each trade that you're having so that you can manage it properly. So the actual implementation of this is front-loading your emotional loss. You need to be front-loading your emotional loss on every trade you take. You need to essentially be expecting your trades to fail. So wouldn't you rather be pleasantly surprised by wins and emotionless at losses rather than emotionless at wins and disappointed by losses? So a good way to explain this is, let's say you're risking $100. You essentially want to just, the $100 that you're risking, you just need to expect that to be gone right as you place your order. And you need to be managing your position in a way where you are trying to get that money back instead of entering the $100 and you're worrying about, am I going to lose the $100 or am I going to gain money? So you're only focusing on the positive of getting the money back instead of having the psychological stress of losing that money. You're accepting that you already lost it and you are essentially trying to get it back, if that makes sense, or more than you got back. Now, another important thing I wanted to go over is not confusing hope with intuition. When you're holding a losing trade, you need to ask yourself this. Am I holding this trade because my strategy or data says it will win, or am I holding the trade purely because I want it to win?
It's got some support right here, so maybe it'll hang on to this 16 area, bounce back up. Come on. Fuck! Oh shit! Oh shit, dude! What the fuck? I just lost $1,500. What the fuck? Oh shit! Oh no, no.
Now, in order to do this, you need to be admitting when you're wrong. You need to understand that there is no room for an ego in trading, and that doubling down on a losing position is easier than exiting a trade and admitting being wrong. But doubling down is going to blow your account. It is going to lose you a shit ton of money. And you need to just admit when you're being wrong and exit the trade. And this is just a quote from Tom Hugard's Best Loser Wins. I recommend you read the entire book, ideally, but pause and read this quote because I thought it applied to this. Now, the actual implementation of this is self-reflection. You need to admit that you are not some kind of super god that can predict everything that's going to happen in the market. And you need to understand that each price change, each market movement is the results of thousands of people entering and exiting trades for various reasons. Uh, for example, a guy could enter a trade because he tripped over his dog and he fell on his keyboard, and he bought. So how do you expect to predict that? You can't. Now, another extremely important thing that you need to be doing is taking data-based actions. So every action you take while trading should be backed by data in order to provide the ideal market or psychological circumstance you personally prevail in. So the process of this is experimenting, taking that data, and refining your approach accordingly. And of course, when you're just starting trading, you are going to have to do a lot of experimentation because you don't have any data in the first place. So collecting data, this would be through journaling, of course, your thoughts, trades, price action conditions that you do or do not excel in. By price action conditions, I mean essentially what I do is I take a screenshot of the chart. If I'm really just not vibing with how the chart is looking, for example, if it's really choppy, you don't do well in that, then I would take a screenshot of that or whatever the condition is and put it in your journal or put it in your notes to just not take a trade in that condition at all. You should be using the data you collect to micromanage small psychological aspects or triggers you have while trading. For example, is trailing your stop loss too tightly and getting stopped out too early in otherwise big winning trades. The psychological trigger of this is locking in profit to avoid potential pain of loss. And as you continue trading, you'll understand that a lot of the bad decisions you make or a lot of your big losses come from you trying to avoid the pain of loss in the first place. So you need to come to terms with that. The next thing you need to do is refine your approach. So you need to adjust how you trade based off of the data you've collected. And you need to be willing to continually experiment to find out what works and what doesn't work for you personally until you become profitable. And an important thing to remember is make sure that you are collecting sufficient data before you change any part of your approach or your strategy. So, for example, if you lose 3 trades in a row doing a certain strategy or certain approach, don't immediately cut that out of your strategy permanently. You need to collect a sufficient amount of data so that you will know for sure if something is or is not working for you. You don't want to cut out things too early. They could end up working for you in the future. You don't want to cut out things too early. And remember, one losing trade is not the end of the world. You need to be focused on the process over the short term outcomes. Now, most importantly, you need to actually take action on the information in this video. You need to understand that success comes from action, not intelligence. And you don't win by being the smartest. You win by having the largest amount of raw inputs as possible. And in trading, these are taking trades, experimenting, collecting data, refining, and repeating that process. You need to do so much work that failing becomes unreasonable through the sheer volume of actions taken and refinement of those actions. For example, let's say you're a terrible basketball player. Now you start training twice a day for 6 months. Then it would be unreasonable for you to still be a terrible basketball player afterwards. So you need to be focusing on putting in as many of these inputs as possible in order to become profitable. So you could become profitable in 6 months if you are actually working on this as much as you can. And you need to understand that. Watching another video is not going to necessarily make you profitable. You need to actually trade and you need to put in the work and put in the effort in order to get the outcome that you want. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and I hope you guys actually take action on the information in this video. Don't just go scroll on TikTok afterwards. But if you enjoyed, I'm going to be releasing at least one video per week from now on. So go ahead and subscribe if you want to see that. I also have my Instagram down in the description if you want to follow me there. And yeah,